It's actually not week 6, it's week 10. Got a lot of things on my desk because there's a lot of things we're going to be covering. So, yeah, I've got this issue with the hair. I'm a delegate at the Constitutional Convention. I'm really trying to figure out, so where are we going with this Constitution? So we've determined that we have the 3 branches of government. Judicial, executive, and legislative. Okay, so this week we're going to focus on their powers. Like, what do they do? Each branch of government has specific powers, and we call that separation of powers. So we're going to go into detail about that. So the executive branch can only do certain things, the judicial branch can only do certain things, and the legislative branch can only do certain things. So we're going to go into detail about what are those powers, and what is the reason we actually have separated those powers. What would happen if we just let the executive make their own laws? What would happen if the executive branch served as the judicial branch? Tyranny. And so what we want to do is we want to take a look at how the Constitution eliminated tyranny. When the people were writing the Constitution, what was their reason for putting in this idea of separation of powers? And included in that, you're going to see another term, checks and balances. So if you look closely, you'll see that each branch has a little arrow to another branch. And that means that this branch, for example, the legislative branch, can check the executive branch. In other words, they can stop them from doing something. Likewise, the judicial branch can say to the legislative branch, you know what? This law that you guys passed, it's unconstitutional. So that's a key word, unconstitutional. As well as the executive branch can check the judicial branch by appointing judges. So we're going to go into detail about the whole idea of checks and balances this week. We are going to briefly talk about 2 groups of people, because when the Constitution was all written and done, they had to approve it. States had to approve it, so they had to ratify it. So we're going to be, if we get time at the end of the week, we're going to be looking at this ratification or approval process. Who was involved in that? We're also going to look at this thing called federalism. Federalism deals with how the states have certain powers and the national government has certain powers. So that's actually our model of our country today. The state of California, for example, can pass certain laws, say for example, laws on the use of certain, the speed limit within the state itself. For example, the state speed limit is 70 miles per hour on the freeway. However, if you cross into Arizona, it's 75. So why is that? Well, it's all because of federalism, the idea of federalism. Now, the federal government can make laws that apply to everybody, all the 50 states. So, for example, the voting age, it's 21 years or 18 years old. That applies to every single state in the country. So we're going to look into detail about this idea of federalism and the powers that both the federal government and state government have. For example, they both share taxing powers. However, a state cannot raise an army and say, okay, we're going to go to war against another state. So we're going to look specifically at that. At the end of the week, it's very important that the terms I just showed you, that you're very familiar with them, because you're going to have a quiz. So follow along closely, do your readings, make flashcards. I highly encourage you to make flashcards. There's a lot of vocabulary here. As you can see, my desk is full of stuff. You want to be able to do that so that you master the Constitution as we get closer to the Constitution written essay.